Good morning, everyone. Let me greet Matthew Swift and Nicholas Lagostetis and my friend Durão Barroso, General Durão Barroso. Also, the American ambassador, Randy, my good friend, Elisa Ferreira, our commissioner. She's from Porto, you know, so she deserves a special applause. Thank you for being here. On a private note, had she won the elections 4 years before me, I wouldn't have had to run for mayor. In 2013, she didn't win, so I had to run 4 years later, but we remain very good friends. So let me give you a little view about Porto. José Manuel already told you a little bit about the city. Why are we considered the liberal city, the Invictus city? Especially because being a bourgeois city, we have been involved in the transformation of Portugal, first of all in 1820, when the monarchy turned constitutional through a revolution that started here in Porto, not a few miles away from here. In 1891, when we were the first to claim the Republic, although the revolt of Porto was squashed, but 10 years later we became, or 20 years later we became a Republic. And then in 1975, when the communists had taken over the power in the country, the revolt against the communists started here, and now we have, as you know, a very constitutional country. Basically, I want to tell you a little bit how we came into power. In 2012, there was a platform of independent citizens. We were not happy about things, how things were being handled in the city. Remember, we were the pigs. Portugal was the P of the pigs. And my predecessor, he believed that the best way to handle it, to handle the crisis, was to tame the city. We were tamed by him. And we built a platform. And this platform came from left to right. We were people that had never been into politics, like myself. And we decided to run against all odds, and the city believed in us. What we told the people then, and we persuaded the people to vote for us, is basically what I want to tell you about. We believe in the cities. The most important things in cities is composed by a triangle. The basis is culture. What defines a city is culture. And then we have welfare and the economy. So this builds what I would say a triangle through which a city can become more interesting and more comfortable. These words seem ridiculous from a point of view of a traditional policy makers, because we normally don't use these words. But if I thought about my children and my mother wanted very much the city to be comfortable. My kids wanted the city to be interesting. And yet, for my mother, the city being interesting still made sense. And for my kids, for the city to be comfortable also made sense. This was as simple as that. So what we did is to work on projecting the city. We managed to reduce unemployment. Of course, we were helped because we were coming out of the crisis. We doubled the budget. We reduced the debt, which was 50% of the budget, to zero. We reduced the cost of facilities. We reduced taxes. For the conservatives here, we did reduce taxes. All taxes were reduced. And still, today, we have no debt. Actually, we have negative debt in the city, which enables us, of course, to reduce also the cost of facilities, which is one of the key factors. What we also did was to develop public housing, to invest heavily in public housing. The city of Porto has at the moment 13% of public housing at affordable prices. The average rent is 60 euros per dwelling, believe it or not, and we have double glazing in all of them. So we thought this is where it makes sense. And of course, what we also started aiming for is targeting the problems of climate change. And we are one of the 100 cities in Europe who have promised each other, and also the European Commission, to reach carbon neutrality by 2030. We have improved public space, and maybe that's why I was reelected 3 times. But of course, this looks like a perfect story, but we are facing a perfect storm. Why are we facing a perfect storm in cities? First of all, the question of mobility. Our cities have, all our cities, be it in the United States, be it in Europe, we have a terrible problem with mobility, which actually affects the capacity that we have to reach carbon neutrality. It also has a terrible social impact, because in some cities, like São Paulo in Brazil, the average São Paulo person spends 4.5 hours per day on transport, be it private or public transport. So imagine if he works 8 or 9 hours, and then he still has to sleep 8 hours, what time does he have to take care of his kids, to educate, to enjoy life? So we have a problem with mobility. We have a terrible problem with the energy transition. We have to turn the cities into producers of power, and that's what we are doing using our rooftops and the solar energy. But it costs a lot of money. We have a problem of housing. In all European and American cities, we have a problem of gentrification, have a problem of housing, affordable housing. Although we have 13%, the number of people that reach us every day asking for public houses makes it more or less impossible to cope with this sort of tide. We have the problem of homelessness. Like you have in the United States, like we have in Europe, we have a problem of people who are homeless. They run to the cities. That's where they can live. We have the problem of catastrophic impacts of climate changes. We have less days of rain, but when it rains, it really pours down, and we have to prepare the cities to cope with that disaster. We have the problem of migrations, and it's not only immigrants coming from abroad. No, it's migrations into the cities. The cities are today pressed by people who formerly, 20 years ago, they enjoyed living outside. Now they want to live in the cities. They want to enjoy the cities, and that's where the jobs are. We have the problem of touristification. We can't cope with the touristification. It's like a flock, and we can't guide the flock into going here or there. It's not in our hands. And the population gets very upset when suddenly their streets are full of people they don't know. We have a problem which is very worrying in Europe and the United States, and we don't talk so much about it: drug trafficking. Drug trafficking and the impact of drugs in cities is a paramount problem. We have, like Le Monde wrote the other day, a white tide. Drugs crossing the Atlantic, multiply the price by 30. It's totally out of control. And it brings about petty crime, but also violent crime. And of course, we have all the asymmetric risks and the cyber attacks and all these problems. So how can we cope? How can cities cope? The main thing and the main problem is that the role of cities has not been recognized by nation states and by international bodies. Cities have, although cities are so important these days, and we all recognize that from Turkey to Belarus, from the United States to South America, also to Africa. Look at the big cities developing in Africa. What is the problem? Cities have become or have remained as policy takers and not policy makers. When we look at European treaties, and Elisa Ferreira and Durão Barroso, they are specialists on that area, there is no space for city governance to be interpreted by the international bodies and by the international treaties. At the same time, the national governments, because they gave away sovereignty, especially in terms of the currency, the budgetary sovereignty, they do not want to give power away to the cities. So the cities, at the moment, they have no political tools to bring about change. And change is paramount. If we want to cope with the problems I told you about the perfect storm we are facing, we need cities to have a bigger role. And of course, it will also have an impact in politics. Cities are traditionally much more cosmopolitan than the countryside. In cities, when we see someone who is foreigner, he may be an American who moved into Porto because of an IT company, or he may be a Moroccan, or he may be a Cypriot. People in cities, they accommodate, they adapt, and they adjust. They become part of a community. It's not the same in the countryside. So all these elements of change have to be recognized by the international bodies and by national states. If we don't do that, if we don't change that, the problems in Europe, they will continue to grow. Nationalism, which derives from suspicion, will grow. And so my last word, because I don't want to take too much of your time, is to say we need cities to have a bigger role. It's the only way to get citizens involved. And believe me, what we know and what we found out in the city of Porto and other cities in Europe with whom we have built treaties and links and alliances, a little bit like the Hanseatic cities. What we know is that citizens they look at politics sideways. They look at national politics sideways. But as far as the policies of the city, not the politics of the city, the policies of the city, they really participate. We get people engaged every day, every morning and every evening and every afternoon, discussing in schools, in museums, in their houses, in restaurants, what are the policies of the cities. And we need the citizens to enjoy and to participate in policies and in politics. If we don't, one day or the other, someone will want the freedom all for himself. And that's what we certainly don't want. Thank you so much.